Wondering how you can figure out if your email marketing is working? Well, a lot of people look specifically at the open rate, right? All of the email platforms make it very easy to find the open rate, and people want to know if theirs is good or not. Well, like most things in marketing, it all depends. There are so many factors that go into your open rate, some of which you can control and a lot of which you can't. So while open rate is a great metric to track, it doesn't tell the whole story. To answer the initial question, what's a good open rate? In general, 20% is considered pretty standard across all industries for email marketing. If you just breathed a sigh of relief, you're not alone. But I do want to share a resource, and I'll put it in the description below, for identifying benchmarks for open rates across a bunch of different industries, because believe it or not, they really do differ depending on your industry. So there's a site called Campaign Monitor, and it pulls together data from millions, maybe billions of emails and breaks it down into an easy to use format. I use this guide all the time. So here it is, Ultimate Email Marketing Benchmarks for 2021 by industry, and they do go by day as well. So if you scroll down here past the introduction, you'll find that in general, and actually for 2020, looking back over the year, the average open rate was 18%. So it actually dropped from, I guess, the 2019 stats that they did have. Average click-through rate, 2.6%. Average click-to-open rate, 14.1. And we're going to talk about those two as well. But let's look at the benchmarks, and this is kind of hard to see. So let's say that you're in the travel industry. And so travel, hospitality, and leisure down here. Typical open rate is about 17.7%. Your click-through rate is right at 2%, and your click-to-open rate is 11.5. Compare this to, say, healthcare services. Open rate is almost 5% higher, well, more than 5%, 6% higher. 23.4, click-through rate is 3.7, and your click-to-open rate is 15.6. That's a huge difference. So what we want to focus on here is, what is a typical open rate for your industry? If you take that into account, it'll give you a better idea of where you stand in the whole scheme of things. So we saw on Campaign Monitor that the open rate was obviously a big consideration, but also they have the click-through rate and the click-to-open rate. And I want to talk about those two because they really are important and they do tell you more of the story. Now, they also looked at unsubscribe rate, and while that's something that we need to talk about one day, it's not going to be today. So let's talk first about that open rate. So open rate, all open rate tells you is how effective your subject line is in catching your reader's attention, right? So think about your email box, right? You've got thousands of emails in it. And what is it about a particular email that makes you click on it as opposed to all the other emails in your box, right? So your subject line has got to be attention catching. It's got to be curiosity invoking. It's got to make them want to click, because it doesn't matter how amazing your email copy is if they never read it. So open rate really does just tell us how effective your subject line is. This is why it's a great idea to split test subject lines. And there are a lot of different ways you can do that, but that'll give you a better idea of which subject lines your audience is responding to, so you can alter them in the future. So with the open rate, the only thing to remember about your open rate is most of the time, your open rate is going to be higher when your email is landing in the primary inbox, particularly for Gmail, as opposed to the promo folder. Now, how do you get that? How do you make that happen? That's kind of a tough story. We'll talk about that later too. But the more often your email lands in the primary inbox instead of the promo folder, the higher your open rate is going to be, right? Because the more likely they are to see it. So it's just a numbers game at that point, right? So open rate is important, but it's not the only thing that is important. It doesn't tell you how effective or engaging your email copy is. And it doesn't help you understand like where your audience is in terms of their relationship with you. That's why we need to look at click-through rate and click to open rate. So your click-through rate indicates anytime a user clicks a link in your email. Now, that could be a lot of different things. In most email software, they calculate the click-through rate that would include things like your email link, like if they clicked your email link to then send you an email, social profile links, anything like that. You can usually dig down into your email software and it'll tell you exactly what your users clicked. The important thing to remember about this is it shows you how vital a solid, clear, identifiable call to action is, because it tells your user what you want them to do next. So don't hide what you want them to do. Tell them, make it a button, make it, in big text or whatever it is you need to do to make sure that they see what you want them to do next. Now the click to open rate is a little bit different. So with the click-through rate, it is taking the number of people who clicked in your email, right, who clicked a link in your email, and dividing it by the number of people who received your email. And so like we saw on the chart, that's a pretty low number for most people, especially if you have an open rate of about 20%, right? So that click to open rate may be around, or excuse me, the click-through rate, about 2%. Totally normal. If you're lower than that, you're in good company too. It's something to work on, right? But your click to open rate is actually the number of click-throughs divided by the number of people who actually opened your email. So to me, it's a better indication of the engagement and the how compelling your email copy is, because it got the people to who opened to actually click through, right? But in general, that's something we need to consider. It really indicates the engagement of our readers, right? So don't just focus on your open rate. Look at your click through and your click to open rates too. Now, a lot of softwares won't tell you the click to open rate. It's actually very easy. Again, it's you take the number of people who opened your email and the number of people who clicked through your email, and you divide it by the number of people who opened your email, and then you multiply by 100, right, to get your percentage. So that's the easy way to do it. I actually have a spreadsheet that I set up that has all the formulas in it and stuff like that. So you can just plug your numbers in and it will calculate all the percentages for you. Maybe I'll drop that below. I'll do that. That's a good idea. So what if your open rates and your CTR and CTOR are not where you want them to be? What does it tell you? Well, it tells you that you might need to work on your email copy, right? Maybe it's not engaging enough. Maybe it's too long. Maybe it's too short. Maybe it's doesn't have enough personality. Maybe there's 1,001 things it could be, but try different things with your email copy and see if you can increase that click-through rate and that click to open rate by making your email copy more engaging. A low CTR or CTOR also tells you something about your calls to action, right? Like they may not know exactly where you want them to click, so they don't click, right? So make sure that your calls to action are really, really obvious. And the other thing that your click-through rate and your click to open rate can tell you is if your email list is actually your audience, like the right audience for your products and services, right? If I had 1,000 people on my email list, but none of them needed email marketing help, then they probably wouldn't be opening my emails and clicking through them, right? Because that's just not a service they need right now. Now, if I were a social media manager and that was something that they needed, they would probably be all over my email, right? So that's another thing to consider. And I know it's a big thing to consider. Are your services and offerings actually compelling to the people on your email list? For a lot of people, you might have folks on your email list that have been there for years, right? Or maybe you brought them in from a different email list that you had from a different company or something else like that. So consider that maybe going on. I'm not telling you to scrap your email list completely and start over, not at all. But it may be time for a re-engagement campaign, in which we offer them the ability to unsubscribe and that sort of thing, which we'll talk about in another video sometime. So, open rate, around 20%, depends on your industry. Click-through rate, around 2%, depends on your industry. Click to open rate, anywhere from 13 to 14% usually, again, depends on your industry. And I'll drop the link to that Campaign Monitor article below. So when you're looking at how effective your email marketing is, don't just stop at the open rate, because it's not the whole story. You need to have some other metrics to consider with your open rate to really get a full picture of what's going on. If this was helpful to you, please subscribe, please like, please leave me a comment. Let me know, what are your questions about email marketing? Because I know you have them and I want to be able to answer them. So drop them in the comments below and we'll see you next time. Thanks.